Hello chaps and chapheads, and welcome to Karl's Cult Movie Reviews. My name is Karl, obviously. Be odd to just name the show after somebody else, but I suppose you could do that. And I'm going to be reviewing cult movies. Now, you may know me as Screezilla, and if you do, thank you for coming to the channel. I do a lot of military history. I'm a big military history nut, and love gaming, and complete nerd basically, but this show is a way for me to get out all of the cult movie stuff that I adore. And when I say adore, I love cult movies. There are so many in my big long list of movies. Most of them you've probably never heard of. However, if you're probably watching this show, you may have done. So I expect you'll have probably seen a couple of these in the past. Now, if you're new to the whole genre of cult movies, well, welcome for one. Cult movies are basically movies that generally don't do too well in their initial period. They don't set off well when they start. They tend to be a little bit forgotten or not well liked or not do well in the box office. But then they find a market afterwards. It can take years, it can take weeks, it can take decades. It depends on the movie. Some are forgotten gems, such as Samurai Cop.
Drop it.
And of course, the most famous of all of the bad movies, The Room.
Hi.
Can I help you?
Yeah, can I have a dozen red roses, please?
Oh, hi, Johnny. I didn't know it was you. Here you go.
That's me. How much is it?
It'll be $18.
Here you go. Keep the change. Hi, doggy.
You're my favorite customer.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye-bye.
But we're going to be looking at some other movies in the genre, some other films, and some of them are going to be terrible, of course. Some of them are going to be okay. And today we're going to have some movies that are actually okay. We're starting off with a film called Late Phases, or as it's otherwise titled, Night of the Wolves. Like most cult movies, it has about 16 different names, which is something you will find, it happens a lot in cult movies. Now, Late Phases is a 2014 monster horror movie, revolving around the character of Ambrose McKinley, played by the fantastic actor and writer Nick D'Amici, one of the writers for the 2006 movie Mulberry Street, which is another movie that I will probably get to at some stage. A little low-budget zombie flick. We meet Ambrose. He's 70 years old and a retired soldier from the US Army, having served in Vietnam. And this is where he sort of started to lose his sight. He lost his sight due to some retinal problems, and eventually his sight went because he was too stubborn to go to a doctor to find out about it. And believe you me, if you have any problems with your eyes, come and see your local optician. We do help people. We do stop you from going blind. It's a good thing to do. Ambrose is busy looking for a headstone there, something that's cheap and just easy to go with. However, he's taken away by his son Will because they need to get to his new home in a retirement village, where he'll be joined with his good doggo, Shadow, played by Raina. As they enter the house, they're quick to discover that the removal men that should have been there have not yet delivered any of the items for Mr. McKinley, leaving the house rather empty. Ambrose gets a feel for his location, just generally touching along the walls, where he finds a very odd bit of wallpapering choice. Seems to be slashed apart by something, and inside is a claw. Interesting. Ambrose doesn't want to stick around though, so he heads outside, quickly discovering that his next door neighbour is having a yard sale. The owner of the house, Dolores, played by Karen Lynn Gorney, she asks if Ambrose is interested in this delicate necklace she is selling. After a little bit of flirting, seems the old dog still has a few tricks left, he asks her about the claw. She's unsure about it and asks maybe it's some kind of bear claw or something like that. After Will leaves, the removalists have been, and Ambrose is busy emptying out boxes, getting his house set in style. And in come the Stepford wives of the area, the Crescent Bay Welcoming Committee, made up of Emma, Gloria and Clarissa, played by Caitlin O'Heron, Royston Alder and Tina Lewis. 3 veteran Scream Queen actresses, and Tina, of course, being an actual Stepford wife from the original 1975 movie. And this is no coincidence. The director, Andrew Garcia Bologna, wanted these three to have that vibe about them, to have that Stepford Wives seeming sort of feeling, not like they're quite not human. We also get a look at Ambrose's knowledge of guns, pulling out a Smith & Wesson 64 revolver. He talks about being an armament specialist. He talks about him being a quartermaster in the army, showing off his skill with a flick of his wrist and closing the cylinder in place. Of course, this is a terrible idea if you own the gun, and if you are a quartermaster in the military, you would know not to do that, because you're going to bugger up the firing pin, and that's not a good thing to do to a gun. We cut to a little bit later in the evening, and Dolores is busy watching TV when she gets a phone call from her daughter, and this is where the movie kicks off, kiddos. It's time to get into gear. Shadow is obviously not happy about something outside, barking away and growling, and we get the idea that not everything is as it seems. We see a shadow in the background and learn that dogs have been going missing in the community for some time. Some of Dolores' own. She's had a few dogs and they've just vanished over the past few months. But why is this? Don't worry, we're about to find out the answer, and we're also going to find out what happened to the prior residents of Mr. McKinley's home. As Dolores is on the phone, she hears some knocking at her door. Politely knocking, I must add. Werewolves tend to be quite polite in these situations. However, she doesn't go to answer the door, she just leaves him standing outside, and this makes the werewolf get a little bit pissy. The lack of answering the door makes it barge its way into the home. We get a quick look at the beautiful practical effects in action here, and Dolores pays the ultimate price for not being a polite and welcoming guest. That being, of course, that her guts are ripped out. She lays dying on the floor. Listening to all this is Ambrose on the other side of the wall, pressing a glass up against it. He can hear what's going on. And this annoys the werewolf slightly. He doesn't like people prying into his private life. He's quite a sensitive werewolf. So he decides he's got to go next door and sort this thing out. Shadow is quite upset, however. She tries her best to keep Ambrose out of the room, barking, tugging, yelling, woofing, everything, to try and keep Ambrose from going into the room where the horror sits, where the werewolf is. Shadow puts up a valiant fight, trying her best to save her human, but it's not enough. Some claw swipes to her flank knocks the poor doggo down, but Ambrose manages to get a shot or two off into the beast. It runs out of the house, smashing its way through the doorway and the windows, and flees into the night. This does lead to one question though: how did the werewolf get in? Did Ambrose just leave his door unlocked and the wolf just quietly got in there, used its sneak skills and found it very easy to get inside? Obviously Ambrose works on Skyrim logic. Unfortunately, Shadow is done for. It really is a dog-eat-dog world out there. Ambrose finally finds Shadow and discovers the claw marks across her flank. He does the best thing he can do for her, holds his revolver against the doggo's head, and makes her go out Old Yeller style. The next day it appears the moving company have forgotten something. They come back to the apartments, back to Ambrose's home, where they discover the carnage that has happened from the night before. Doors blown open, blood everywhere, and Ambrose sat in the corner, hugging the corpse of Shadow. However, the second delivery driver goes next door and discovers a much more gruesome scene as he comes across Dolores' corpse. A little bit later in the day, Will and his wife Anne take him to the vets. Might be a little bit late for that now, Ambrose. I mean, the dog does look pretty unwell, and I'm pretty sure the 45 you put in the back of its skull, it's not going to be very easy to fix that with a general vet. You're probably going to need a necromancer for that, or possibly a pet cemetery. The vet gives us some information, however, on Crescent Bay, that they get a call every month, and that dogs tend to go missing or end up dead. Ambrose asks a question: is it a bear? Was it a mountain lion? Was it something like that? And the vet shakes her head. She says, no, this looks like a dog, a big dog. Getting back home, we see a mountain of police outside and Dolores' daughter sobbing away, sorry that she didn't get her mum out of there before this happened. The police are not much use either, thinking it was an animal attack still, just saying it was some kind of mountain lion or bear that did it. And that, well, these old people, they should just stay indoors because they're too frail to fight back after all. Ambrose grabs a shovel and heads out back. He starts digging a grave for his doggo. Anne and Will come by and drop the news that it was a full moon last night. This makes Ambrose click that it was a werewolf. He asks when the next full moon is, and they reply, 1 month time, of course. It's time to get ready. Next morning, the postie arrives and notices a blood pool on the ground. Ambrose asks him nicely to follow the pool, and if he could show him the way. Obviously, Ambrose, being blind, can't do it. It leads us to house number 1202, Huntington. The house of Gloria and John Baker, our first suspects. As he gets inside, Gloria says she's just given her husband a haircut. Suspicious, very suspicious. And offers to get him a drink. Ambrose decides to investigate as he can hear some wheezing coming from another room. It sounds like some lumbering pain of some animal. He goes into the room to discover that John is in fact in an iron lung, and that's why she was giving him a haircut. Due to Ambrose's blindness, he fiddles around and almost turns off the iron lung. Gloria is dismayed by this and claims that Ambrose was trying to kill her husband. Of course, he was just feeling around this strange object. Asking him to leave, we get one of my favourite lines.
Does he ever get out of that thing?
About as often as you blink, Mr. McKinley.
Yeah. Good luck with your vegetable.
Incredibly harsh, but a good witty comeback nonetheless. The police arrive after getting called out because of Ambrose's investigation, and we see that he got a leaflet from the local church. A shuttle bus will be coming every Sunday. The Sunday comes, and we meet James Griffin, played by Lance Guest, prolific character actor, and Brody in Jaws 2, along with Father Roger Smith, played by Tom Noonan, another one of those actors that's been in pretty much everything known to man, but I know him best from Hell on Wheels, where he played a drunken vicar. Strange. We learn that Father Smith is also a smoker. This will come back to us for some more relevance later. We're treated to a sermon directed towards Ambrose himself, Father Smith talking about giving up things and loss. As the sermon goes along, a dog walks past the church and starts to lose its shit. Very angry, and Griffin has to go and close the doors after it barks and tries to run into the church. This gives us more suspicion onto who the werewolf is. After the sermon, the vicar and Ambrose have a bit of a chat. They chat about how Ambrose lost his sight and is not planning on living much longer anyway. This concerns the vicar, obviously, who thinks that Ambrose is talking about suicide, but he's not. He's talking about an upcoming battle. We get ourselves a mother-loving montage. Ambrose counting steps in the house, working out how large the rooms are by step, digging his doggo grave even deeper. Also, dating this video, he has a hell of a stack of toilet paper. The guy must be so rich. It's next Sunday, and the Stepford wives are complaining to James Griffin about how Ambrose tried to kill Gloria's husband and scratched up her floors with his shovel that he uses as a cane. They don't want him on the bus anymore as they fear he might be violent. With each segment, we see the moon's phase. We return to the tombstone yard, Will giving his father a lift there. He buys himself an extremely large and heavy tombstone. His son's actually a little bit worried about how his father's spending money and carrying around almost all his savings in cash, and wonders why his father wants such an expensive tombstone anyway. As he goes to pay for it, he asks O'Brien about any local gun stores and's given some information. After buying the tombstone, Ambrose is dropped off home by Will. They have a little bit of an argument, and Ambrose heads out back to continue digging the human-sized grave. His attentions are brought up by the sound of somebody approaching and the smell of somebody very smoky. Initially he thought it was Will, but the smell of smoke gives it away that it's not, and he readies himself with his shovel. Quickly he gives the hooded figure a hefty whack with the shovel. The attacker falls to the ground, leaving a scarf behind. It smells, and it smells very smoky. We cut to next Sunday, where the shuttle bus simply drives past Ambrose. But James Griffin comes and picks her up anyway, giving him a lift to the church. James Griffin explains that everybody thought the shuttle bus would be a little bit cumbersome for poor Ambrose, and they wanted to make it easier for him. Yeah, right, they're just entitled bitches, really. But we do have our first suspect, the vicar. Being a heavy smoker, obviously he smells of smoke, and this is our first clue as to who it could be. After another sermon, the two start to have a conversation about how they got to this point in their lives. Father Smith about how he used to be a rough kid. He managed to box away the bad parts and now uses fags as a coping method. Ambrose, on the other hand...
I went to Nan. I honestly thought I was going to save lives.
Yeah, you ended up taking her.
My last tour, 68, Yampo Valley. The Goose. They strapped a grenade to a kid. Maybe 6 years old. They sent him at us. Nobody take the shot. I did.
Is that what happened to that good side of you?
I might be blind, but when I close my eyes, I still see that kid's face. That moment was like a transformation. God don't want nothing to do with me, Father. And I don't want nothing to do with him.
James comes back to give him a lift home. James gets really upset and angered when Ambrose asks about Father Smith and if he's ever acted irrationally or angry towards anybody in the past. Pulling up to Ambrose's home, James is quick to get Ambrose to leave. He seems very upset by the fact that he believes that the vicar could be somebody bad. A little while later we get a knock on the door, and it's the Tombstone delivery man. This gives Ambrose a chance to get into town without his son and get to the gun shop. This is where we meet Westmark, played by Dana Ashbrook, probably best known for his role as Bobby Briggs in Twin Peaks. Ambrose asks for silver bullets. A little bit of an odd request from a blind man, for sure. He asks them for his .64 revolver, his Remington 700 BDL rifle, and a shotgun shell. Now, as I said, I'm a little bit of a history nerd and a little bit of a military nerd. There's a bit of speculation here. Now, back in Vietnam, the Smith & Wesson 38 Special was generally used by what we call tunnel rats, a special group of badass soldiers that were sent down the tunnels in Vietnam where the Viet Cong used to hide. The fact that he has this gun and he also has a very good sense of smell and sort of spatial awareness, very good hearing, may suggest that Ambrose was actually a tunnel rat in his time. Because they operated in pitch black conditions, they obviously were almost blind. And if this is actually the fact, this would be such a good little bit of extra trivia for him, a little bit of extra character building, and would make so much sense. I'm not sure if it was actually meant to be that way, but if it was, kudos to the filmmakers. Asking Westmark what he thinks about when asked for silver bullets, he comes up with the Lone Ranger, using silver bullets to fight crime because they are pure and sacred. Ambrose asks him if anyone else has been asking about silver bullets before. Westmark does say, yeah, one person, let me check. We cut to Griffin. We discover the reason for the smoky smell, as Griffin is busy cremating bloodied clothing along with lots of dead pets and livestock. Obviously this has been going on for some time and he knows how to get away with these crimes. Griffin heads back into the community, starting to place flyers down for the church. He just so happens to be placing a flyer down in Dolores' postbox when he sees Ambrose getting home. He notices that he's carrying a bag labelled Westmark and starts to panic. Quickly, he runs away. A little later in the evening, Will comes to visit his father and almost gets the shadow treatment of being shot. Will's a little bit upset about this. The two start having a heart-to-heart conversation. We discover that Anne is up the duff. Will and Anne are going to be moving away and confronting his father about the wedding ring of his now dead wife, asking why he said he threw it in the coffin when he'd actually kept it. Will gets very upset about this and the fact his father is so cold and unloving towards him. He says he's cutting all ties with him, he's not going to help him anymore, and he's going to be moving away. That's it, he's had enough. One last thing we discover though, is tomorrow night will be 1 month since he moved in. Tomorrow night will be a full moon. We come across a dishevelled looking Griffin who has broken into Clarissa and Richard's home.
James, we will pray. We will pray. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Lord, let me seek not to be consoled, but to console. Let me seek not to be understood, but to understand. Let me seek not to be loved, but to love. For it is in giving that we receive, and it is in dying that we are born to eternity.
Next on his list of bitees is Emma. It seems he is going for all of the Stepford wives. Later the next day, Reverend Smith comes by. He comes up to talk to Ambrose first.
What the hell's the hole in the wall?
Dog.
That's a big cross for a dog.
It was a big dog.
You wanted to save lives a long time ago, right?
Yeah. A long time ago.
It was. It's never too late to save your own. You hear me? I'm pointing at you.
I hear you.
As they talk, the sun is starting to set. Reverend Smith says he's actually checking on another neighbour and decided to come in to just see Ambrose to make sure he was doing okay and not killing himself. As Reverend Smith leaves, alarm bells start to trigger in Ambrose's head as he realises the person that Father Smith is going to visit is Griffin himself.
What do you mean that you cannot find him? You are the police. I mean, he's an old man. Let me tell you something. He attacked both me and my neighbors in our own home. I am lucky to be alive. Oh, God, this neighborhood has gone to pot.
Obviously they're not doing a great job as they haven't checked his house yet. The Reverend and Griffin have a conversation. He starts asking for absolution, for aid from the church to get rid of this demon inside of him. He has been committing self-harm, hard cuts across his chest. As they talk, all of a sudden, the cuts start to heal. All his wounds start healing. What's this? This is so strange. We learn that Griffin actually killed the original werewolf, but he got caught. He got bitten and now has become one of them. And this is a really interesting little addition to the story. It makes Griffin a somewhat likable character in the fact that he was trying to save the community, but he got infected himself. And this leaves him in a position of, well, not wanting to die obviously, but wanting to get rid of this curse. And is a nice little bit of extra storytelling. But it is now too late for the Reverend, as the moon has risen, and it is indeed full. Griffin starts asking for absolution and telling the vicar he needs to run, he needs to leave, he's going to kill him. He doesn't have a chance. He asks for forgiveness from Reverend Smith, as he is going to kill him, as he's going to devour him. And now, chaps and chapettes, we are treated to a glorious grade A practical effects. The transformation is about to happen. For some unknown reason, Reverend Smith just stands there watching the transformation happening, seeing his friend's skin rip apart, him start to grow, bones break and reset, hair start jutting out everywhere, his jaw ripping apart, a snout becoming his mouth now. It's not until the end of the transformation that Reverend Smith decides, nah, I've had enough of this, I'm out of here. He panics and runs. However, this is a horror movie, remember. So, in a true horror movie style, he can't get his key into the car, then can't get his car started. This means it's too late for the Reverend. Mr. Wolf performs a leap, landing on top of the car, and tomato soup shoots out everywhere. It's the end of the vicar. We cut back to Ambrose as he staggers around. He makes it back to the baker's residence. However, Mr. Baker isn't doing so well. Due to him being stuck in an iron lung, he's become canned lichen food, and he's missing his head now. A nice little effect on this is with every pump of the iron lung, we get the blood splurting everywhere. Nice little effect that, nice little attention to detail. Ambrose sniffs the air and smells Mrs. Baker's perfume. Ambrose smacks the bitch with his shovel and manages to get a good hit on her. However, it gets the receipt across his flank. Her claws slash across his waist, similar to the injuries that Shadow suffered earlier. He does, however, make it back to his home. He quickly calls his son. We cut away. It's now that we prepare for war. Getting into his dress uniform, we can see that he was a staff sergeant and has spent 5 years or more in active duty on the front line. The infantry blue cord meaning that he'd had advanced training, so we know he's even more of a badass than we first thought. Sharpening the edge of his shovel to use as a blade, he gets ready. Putting a hearing aid in one ear, he chucks a bloody rag out the window to try and attract the wolves into that location, and gets his aim on spot with his rifle. Our rather useless and unmentioned as to now security guard at the front of the estate notices a very large werewolf walking past. This is a time where he decides he's going to leave and run away, locking the gates behind him. What an absolute arsehole. This is also where we get the first good look of the werewolves, and as much as I love the practical effects, as much as I love the costumes in this movie, I do have to say the werewolves do look a lot like hobgoblins. Crap, now I've said that, I'm going to have to review that movie, aren't I? Oh dear. The bloody rag technique Ambrose has used seems to be working. Listening in, he gets a good idea where the targets are and lets loose, rolling a natural 20 on his first shot, hitting one of the wolves in the heart. The second shot only a 10. He manages to get a shot into the leg of one of the fleeing wolves. Angered by one of their pack getting killed, a few flee but one. Jumping to the second story of the building, the werewolf tries to get the jump on the crafty vet, but he pulls out his revolver and shoots the werewolf square between the eyes. That's one more of the furry bastards down. It's obvious that he's now in pain, however. The wounds to his flank are starting to cause more trouble, and he starts to hear the wolves downstairs. He heads down to meet them head on. Unfortunately, he rolls a 1 after being jumped on from behind and manages to blow a toe off. Undeterred by his shot to his toe, he quickly regains composure. Grabbing a frying pan, he quickly twats the beast in the face, knocking it away for a few moments before finishing it off with 2 more shots. We see outside that when killed, the wolves return to their human form. Also, they seem to carry over some traits of their former humans. One wolf has got a white eye, looking like it was blind in one eye. That must make it Richard. So that's his wife dead on the floor. He cradles her and is obviously upset. And now we get to answer the question, is one eye better than none? Going full Kool-Aid guy, Richard leaps through the window, getting a jump on Ambrose, knocking him over. Fortunately, however, his shotgun is close to hand. Richard's head is promptly blown apart like a watermelon being hit by a sledgehammer. Meanwhile, after getting a message from his father, Will arrives at the retirement village and tries to call him on the landline. His dad is, well, it's not the best time to call, as there are werewolves attacking him. Unable to get through the gates, Will leaves his car behind and goes running to try and find his dad. This really hinders Ambrose, as the phone ringing distracts him along with the werewolf at the grave. But not enough. The wolf has now gone into the hole, and we find out why the headstone was needed, and needed to be so large. It was a Kevin McAllister-esque trap. Pulling on a rope, the heavy tombstone flattens the wolf, weakening it, but not quite enough. As it leaps from the grave, and the two get into close combat, Ambrose gets his shovel. However, using it to block the jaws of the werewolf, gets bitten in half. Now with his shovel broken, the wolf manages to get some bites in on his shoulder and neck. Thinking fast as the wolf comes down on him for one more attack, the coup de grace you could say, he uses the 2 broken ends of his shovel, jamming them into the werewolf's eyes, making this an equal playing field now. The werewolf steps back, howling in pain, and Ambrose, grabbing his revolver, finishes the beast off with a silver bullet to the neck. Bloodied and beaten, Ambrose manages to get himself to his rocking chair. He starts hearing some familiar sounds as he utters to himself, "I'm done." Will, however, is not. Getting to the house of horrors, he discovers blood all over the place, a dead Clarissa on the floor, and notices a dying werewolf by her side. He rushes to find his father, but it's too late. Ambrose is dead and gone. We finally hear the message he left on his phone. We finally hear the heartfelt message Ambrose left on Will's phone.
Will, it's your old man. I don't want to leave it like this between us. I left because I didn't want to touch on you or her, but I was wrong. I know that now. I wasn't just blind in my eyes, I was blind in my heart. The only thing I was good at was being a soldier. That's what I am. That's how I'll go now. Give my love the hand. And be the man I couldn't be. I love you, boy. I always have. Goodbye, son.
As the coffin is put into the grave, Will picks up the rifle, locks and loads, and shoots it into the sky. Fortunately, a full moon.
Stop mocking me! Ha! Take that, moon. Perfect orbit my ass!
So, that was Late Phases. Overall, I love this movie. The costumes don't look great in full light, and sometimes especially look a bit goofy, but the story itself helps get you past that part. In a world where werewolf movies are a little bit hard to find and tend to be a bit obscure, there are things like Ginger Snaps and, of course, American Werewolf and Teen Wolf and other such movies, but there's not quite as many werewolf movies as there are vampire movies. This really does stand out as a great one, and I would put it up there alongside Dog Soldiers as a very, very good movie. Crap, that's another one I'm going to have to review, isn't it? Damn it. Anyway, if you enjoy a good story, actual physical special effects, and a handicapped person kicking serious ass like we can, for a lower budget film, this is also a bit of an unknown movie as well, so it will get you some hipster points if you need them around movie friends. This is definitely one to watch. A bit of an obscure one, but well worth the watch. Honestly, if you're a fan of 1980s horror movies that revolve around a small cast of talented actors and actresses with a great bit of story, you're probably going to love this one. So if you've enjoyed this, please feel free to spread around the word of it. Share, like, subscribe, all of those usual things. They will really help. As you know, you can see probably by the channel it is very small at the moment, but I do hope to grow a bit. I'm also going to be reviewing some more movies. If there are any movies that you do think I should review, please put them down in the comments. I will try and get to them eventually if they are down there. Anyway, I'm Karl. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a spiffing day. Bye-bye. A little later in the evening, Will comes to visit his farmer. Farmer?